Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And today I'm going to be talking about a game it just started it all for me, Battlefield. And in particular, the next one coming down the pipe, Battlefield 2016. So back in the day, I pretty much started on Battlefield 1942, but I didn't really play that one quite as much. But as soon as Battlefield 2 came out, that was pretty much my go-to game that really got me started with vehicle combat, sort of vehicles and trucks and jeeps and tanks and all that kind of gameplay. And I really gravitated to being in the armored fighting vehicles and the tanks, and there was so much really cool stuff about it. And moving on to like all the other games in the series, like I'll break them up later on, but um, for the next game for Battlefield, like 2016, like they've already covered World War II quite extensively. They've done modern pretty much to death completely. Um, the real question for me is what will the setting be for the new game? And personally, I would like to see it be in a Cold War setting, or maybe even Korea, or bit past Korea, like 60s type 70s sort of thing. So it would be that era of weaponry, that era of tanks and armor, moving into that sort of timeline, kind of similar to what it was like in Metal Gear Solid 3 for PS3, where it was kind of a step back and like a preview or a prelude to the modern day, which Snake was fighting in with really advanced weaponry and stuff. So Battlefield 2 was awesome. It had a lot of really great maps. Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2 were pretty much my favorite Battlefield games, that and Battlefield 2. When we started getting into Battlefield 3 and 4, I really didn't like the weapon upgrade system. I found it really overcomplicated, convoluted. The map shrunk. It became more about trying to be like COD and less about vehicles. Everything about it just kind of seemed like it was like the developers forgot what the strengths of their game were, and they decided, oh, we got to try and be this COD killer. And instead of playing to the strengths of their game, their engine, and what they'd built in the past, and all that experience that they had just sitting there, and the people that played their game for a certain reason. And I've heard Jack Frags talk about this very subject, and I have a very different opinion. My background is very different from his, and he wants the game to drop back to World War II, but I would really much prefer it to kind of drop back about 3 decades, 4 decades, and kind of play in that time period that no one's really played in really that much. Comparatively speaking to World War II, you've got tons of Iraqi freedom games. You've got all that stuff is just out there. It's been out there for so long. But for me, like the strengths of the Battlefield series, like there's just it's kind of hard to break it all down. Like the engine is fantastic. The sound design is monumental. It's probably some of the best sound engineering I've ever heard. The physics for the tanks and the vehicles and crashing through everything are fantastic. There's buildings breaking, they fly apart, they break, they collapse down on each other, and all of that works really well, especially in Bad Company. I really liked it. The games typically have a huge budget behind them, and the experience of the dev team is second to none. It really puts dev teams like Wargaming and Gaijin kind of to shame when it comes with the amount of experience they can bring to the table. I also found that there was a really good sense of balancing in Bad Company in particular between the weapons and the classes, and there wasn't too many guns. There seemed to be something that was good at the one thing you wanted to be, but it had its drawbacks, and it was just I found the balancing of the game was really well done. The particle effects, again, like my PS3 when I was playing Bad Company 2, I still find like to this day that the only game that even gets kind of close to the immersion of a tank battle and buildings going down and big explosions like you're seeing in the background there. War Thunder can kind of mimic that because the sound is really well done, but I've been in fights in Battlefield where I'm like sweating, and it's like how do I get out of there? And you got guys trying to C4 your tanks, and it's just really exciting. And I, in particular, I like the conquest mode. Like it's the basic mode that is pretty much in every single one of these games where you take Capt points and try and hold them. But I actually really gravitated to the rush mode where you have to like push through more of an elongated map, and you got enemies that are trying to control the MCOM stations, and one of the enemies that are trying to go and take them over, and you can do that with tanks and vehicles and helicopters and jets and all that sort of stuff. And I really, really like the rush mode, and it's one of the things that really I find holds back games like World of Tanks and in War Thunder, Armored Warfare. They have their own way they play and stuff, but I like the different game modes that are in Battlefield, and I find that they kind of change the way you play and think about what you're doing while you're playing. When it comes to things I don't like about the Battlefield series too much, I find the tank armor profiles are pretty simplistic. Like you don't really bounce rounds too much. You can angle and you'll take more damage from the sides, and if you get shot in the back, you'll take bigger hits, and you get set fire, things like that. But it's if they could make that a little bit more real and a little bit less arcade, I would probably like it better. But it's not terrible. The fact that you can jump out and repair your tank with a socket wrench, it's as stupid as it sounds, but it has its own charms to it. I would prefer if you couldn't do that, or if there was a mode where it was more hardcore. But it adds a little bit more. You need to be a little bit more careful when you can't get your hit points back, when you can't regenerate your tank. But I don't think that is probably something they're really going to look at, because the arcade nature of Battlefield is pretty arcadey. And the instant turret, where your turret can blast around at 1,000,000 miles per hour, depending how fast you can move your mouse, that's another thing I don't particularly like. I would much rather have it be the different tanks had different turret speeds, similar to all the contemporary other tank games that are currently out. I think it would be better if it weren't like that. It'd be a little bit more realistic, but realistic isn't really what this series is about. I would just like a little bit like 10% more realistic. And that, adding those sorts of little tiny things, I don't think that would really change it too much. It wouldn't be maybe as Twitch, but I think it would bring maybe a few people out of the camps of War Thunder, World of Tanks, and Armored Warfare, and maybe take a little bit harder look at Battlefield, because maybe if it wasn't so twitchy and kill to death wasn't like or the time to death, like for COD, I think it's like 1 second or something. Like Battlefield's the same, where you just die insta-fast. And the pacing of the game is really quick. But what I think the future game would be for me, like I would just like it to focus more on vehicles, a lot less about infantry. Like infantry can be there, it's still really cool. Have the guns, have the C4, blowing up jeeps, all that kind of stuff is really great. I just think that they should focus on their strengths. The design, the vehicles, and the world destruction, those are the strengths of Battlefield for me. Just the way they can design the game, and they know what they're doing. I would add Cold War format, like I said before, bigger maps, but I want more nations. I want different variety of vehicles. I think it's been a little bit overdone with USA versus Russia. They've added in China. They completely ignore Britain. They ignore France's tanks. They ignore like all the other. They'll have all these guns from different nations, but they seem to be more than happy at ignoring every other nation that's ever made vehicles. Like, why not have Germany in there, or make it all about private military corporations, more similar to Armored Warfare? The other thing that I would probably like to see in the game is the weapon system kind of drop back to the way it was in Bad Company 2. I really like this, the simplicity of the weapon upgrades. I don't mind having lots of different guns to pick from, but I just never really gravitated to, okay, I've unlocked the next gun, but I've suddenly lost all my red dot sights, I've lost my foregrips, I've lost everything. And it just kind of felt like oh great, well, why am I going to pick the next gun when I feel like I've got to kind of grind through each single gun? It felt really kind of disgusting. I don't know, I didn't really like it. But that's just me, and I really preferred the way the gun systems were in Bad Company 2, or even Battlefield 2 compared to Battlefield 3 and 4. So I don't really know when Battlefield 2016 is due out. I haven't really heard any information on what it's supposed to be like, whether it's just going to be another continuation of wanting to be like Call of Duty, which is kind of why I don't play it anymore. Like, I've actually popped in Bad Company 2 and played out of my PS3, and people are still playing it, and it was still really fun. and it still actually looks quite good, especially considering how old it is compared to the games that are out now. So I'm hoping it's going to come out this year, and I love Battlefield, and if it swings back more towards how it used to be as compared to how it is now, it's definitely something I'm going to be looking at and probably going to be covering on the channel. But just want to thank everyone for listening to my rant. Talk to you later.